Good morning. My journey in social media began in 2015. I started on Twitter, then moved to Facebook, and we're going backwards. I am at NICU_musings on a variety of platforms. But as I said, it started in 2015, and then, I don't know about you, but around 2021, something was going on in the world. I can't remember exactly what it was. It's a fog. I was bored, extremely bored. My kids were on top of me saying, "Dad, you got to check out TikTok." And I said, "I'm not dancing, I'm not singing, I don't do that sort of stuff." They said, no, you can try it, do other stuff. So I did. And eventually, I made this post about a fetus that was growing in a liver. And someone found that interesting. In fact, about 15 million people found that interesting. And what happened after that was I started getting phone calls. I started getting New York Post, Newsweek, USA Today, wanting to talk about this. And so skip ahead about another year. I was doing something that you might say I should be ashamed of, but I'm going to say I bet there's at least one other person in this audience that did this. All right, are you ready for it? I Googled myself. Right? And this is what I found. I saw some nice pictures of me. I thought they were nice. And then I saw, and it made me smile, Newsweek was on the bottom left-hand corner of one picture. But then I saw something that actually gave me a moment to pause, to think about what is going on. And you can see it's highlighted in yellow. Internet personality. Well, some people might think that that's a wonderful thing. I looked at it as, but wait, I could be a doctor, I could be a neonatologist, 5-pin bowling champion. I've accomplished some things in my life, and it's coming down to internet personality. Is that really what I want to be known for? Now, we just heard this fantastic talk from Ryan. And this picture was taken back in 2017 when Ryan and I attended a conference in Sweden. The picture was actually taken because we wanted to convince everybody, whoops, they're sliding there. We wanted to convince everybody that we're actually two different people. Okay. And now that you've seen Ryan come up, and thanks Ryan for dressing similarly to me this morning, it's making it difficult on people. But nonetheless, I have watched with amazement of what Ryan has accomplished. And thank you to the organizers, by the way, for putting him first. That was great. Slides into this talk well. So I've watched with great amazement of what has happened with NeoMind AI. Ryan is publishing about every other week, it seems, and doing some incredible things. The reason I mention this is because when we think about clinicians, and specifically the academic clinicians, people like Ryan and many members in this audience are people we think of. There are people, at least back in 2015, maybe even now, that see me sharing information on the internet and say, well, he might be an okay doctor, but this isn't really academic medicine. They might even think I'm a fraud. And I hope by the end of this talk you may think I'm not a fraud. Spoiler alert. Now, when we think about the pillars of clinical medicine or medicine overall, this is what I was told when I was first hired. My very first job, my division head sat me down and he said, "Michael, when we're hiring you into this job, we need you to think about the 4 pillars of medicine. You need to be a clinician, a teacher, an administrator, and a researcher." Well, 20 years have gone by, or actually a little over that now, but 20 years have gone by since I first heard those words. And what I've learned over the last 20 years is that there's a 5th pillar. And the 5th pillar, assuming nobody walks out of this talk, you'll find out in about 18 slides. Now, my world was shaken to the ground. 2015, I was posting on Twitter, I was posting on Facebook, and one day I'm walking to my car, and a senior colleague is walking towards me. She grabs me by the arm, pulls me into an alcove, and she says, "Dr. Narvey, what is going on? People are showing me what you're doing on the internet. You are an embarrassment to this section." She said, I have been watching this, and it is unbecoming of a section head, or what some people might call a division head, to be sharing information on the internet. Now, this is someone who had hobnobbed with the big ones. I mean, I had watched her at PAS meet, the Martins and others that, had been legends of neonatology. And she's telling me, she hired me, by the way, but she's telling me that I'm an embarrassment. So what this slide is supposed to show, unfortunately, is from Field of Dreams. It's Ray Liotta talking to Kevin Costner. And the caption at the bottom, which isn't showing up, says, "What's in it for me?" And this was my existential crisis. Here I am doing what I thought was pretty good work. I was sharing information, I was educating the masses, and here's somebody I respect who's saying, "I don't think you should be doing this." So it really started to get me thinking, what is in it for me? Why am I doing this at all? Now, I don't pretend to be the Dalai Lama, but what I wanted to share with you is that the root of happiness is altruism, the wish to be of service to others. I think that's really at the core of why I and others who are on social media do what we do. I have a vested interest in improving healthcare, improving discussion, getting conversations going. I do it because I think that would be of help to others. So while I'm not the Dalai Lama, I think that there's some lessons that can be taken from there. Now, because this is meant to be somewhat academic, and I'm trying to prove to you that I have some academia to myself, there is some research on social media that I'd like to share with you because it actually resonates as why some people do what we do. So this was published back in 2016. It was a qualitative study asking people like myself who were either writing blogs or posting on Facebook, Twitter, what have you, why are you doing this? And so there were 3 themes that emerged. One of them really resonated with me, the idea of the Lone Ranger. So being on the frontier, doing things that no one else had yet done. This was uncharted territory. And with that was the second theme. The second theme was uncertainty, which I have to tell you, I'll bare my soul, I have wondered many times, what is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing this? What is at the end? Is it fame? Is it education? Is it money? We'll talk about that later. But what is it? And so it was uncertain as to where we're going with all of this. Now, back in 1986, there was a monumentous event in rock and hip-hop history. That's right. Aerosmith and Run DMC re-released Walk This Way. Now, many of you in the audience are thinking he's lost his mind. How is this relevant at all? But it's very relevant because even in Canada, we got MTV. And it was, the signal wasn't very good because of the cold distortion of it. But what we did see was that there was a video. Some of you are old enough, many of you are old enough to remember it, a video of Aerosmith breaking the wall down with a sledgehammer, and then they peer through the wall and they see Run DMC on the other side. It was a fusion, okay? And the third lesson that we learned from the qualitative study is the concept that people that are partaking in social media feel that media and social media are one, okay? So it's whether you have a printed journal copy, I don't know if anybody still uses those, but a printed journal copy versus an online copy versus seeing a post on Twitter that says, hey, check out this interesting article. They're equivalent in many ways. In fact, in 2009, this cover from Time magazine appeared, which really said it all. The cover was a reporter advertising they had an article in the magazine that you should check out, right? So they're using social media to promote media. So I would put to you that the lines have become blurred over time. And this is, in a very short time frame when you think about it, 2009 until now. As I was reflecting also on what drives me, and probably others, to do what we do, I was thinking about a book that was written in 2000. Many of you will have read it or at least heard of it, Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, or The Tipping Point. The tipping point is quite literally about what causes things to go viral. Okay, so much like social media, when you hear something went viral, why does an idea go from an idea to spreading through a community, to spreading through a city, to spreading through the US, to the world? And I think that there's a lot in common with why we are successful, for some of us, in social media and putting out information. At the core of the tipping point, again, 3 points. What drives trends to go viral are you need connectors. These are people who are friendly, know people, social animals. You need mavens. You need people who know a lot about a certain topic, okay, and are believable. Because if I was to put something out, let's say about, I don't know, quantum mechanics on my Twitter feed, I think people would scroll right by because they would say, even though I did take quantum mechanics at one point in my life, I'm certainly not an authority in quantum mechanics any longer. Salesmen. Salesmen are exactly what you think they are. These are people who are very good at selling ideas, okay? Good marketers. So let's explore that. This was taken back in 2023, and I'm delighted to say this is a little gem and treat for people in the audience because there's actually quite a few people in the audience who are in this picture. This was the Neo Twitter get-together. This was at PAS 2023 in Washington. These are connectors. This is a great example of connectors. People who are interested in linking up with one another, coming together for a bigger purpose. When you have all these people coming together, and all these people are on social media, Twitter, or X, but they're on different platforms and they're sharing information with each other, things can grow. It's great soil to get an idea to flourish. Now, Ryan, you're appearing twice in one talk. This is incredible. But the point is, we have mavens in our midst. Now, I don't know all of you in the audience. I know many of you. But of the ones I know, there are mavens. There are people that are authorities on things. This slide has 4 mavens, actually. The Incubator podcast hosts, I would consider to be mavens. I believe they just became the #1 podcast for medical information. Congratulations in the world. So I would say congratulations, you're mavens. You guys know everything there is to know about doing a medical podcast, although I'm sure you'd argue you can still grow. And then, of course, in the AI field, we are blessed with these 2 individuals who one of them has already spoken. And because Ryan and I look so similar, and I think he's a handsome guy, I like to put his picture up quite often. But nonetheless, these people can be trusted. So as they start posting things, and I see their posts, I interact with their posts, you're going to pay attention, all right? And then the next is salesmen. So this is very interesting. Down in Texas, there's a group of physicians that got together and formed a company called Medfluencers. And one or more of you in the audience could be part of that, I don't know. But these are people, these are physicians and nurses and other healthcare professionals who are represented. It's a talent agency, formed by doctors for health professionals, and they are selling brands, they're selling products, they're making money. Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm not saying that one should try to make money. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong to represent brands. But what I am saying is these are all social media people who have been recruited to these talent agencies. And there's other talent agencies. And the reason that they're doing it is because they're good salesmen or salespeople. So as we take a closure of this part of the talk, I think that a lot of this resonated with me. So why am I doing this? Well, I'm a friendly fellow. If you've not met me yet, I'd love to meet you. So I'm connected with people. I feel like as a neonatologist, I have some credibility. I've written some statements for the Canadian Pediatric Society. I've done some research, so I have some things to say. And I think to a certain degree, I don't mind speaking, as evidenced by being up here. And so maybe either I myself am a salesman, or I can sell something by having somebody else represent it. you know, I'm not sure if anyone's aware there's an election happening very shortly. And I have to say, President Trump and presidential candidate Trump is correct about one thing. And I'm, again, not getting political, but when he says there's fake news out there is fake news out there. Now, again, this is meant in jest. I'm not going to get political, but what I am going to say is, if you want to talk about medical misinformation is rampant on social media. Okay, so one of my motivations, personal motivations, has been to fight it. You know, we just heard mention of vitamin K. Just last month or so, I did a post on TikTok and Instagram about vitamin K, trying to combat medical misinformation. And so if you want to really join the fight, unfortunately, you're not going to find it in the New York Times. Well, you might find it there too, but where you're really going to find it centered is on X or in other social media platforms. So President Trump is onto something. One of the things that possibly, and I wanted to share with you because it was a huge motivator for me to continue, was back around 2000, I really was having that existential crisis of, well, what is this all about? Why am I doing this? This is a lot of work. I'm not getting paid. I didn't tell anyone that, but yeah, I don't get paid. And so why am I doing this? And then out of the blue, I got this wonderful email from a teacher in Little Rock, Arkansas. And he said, I've got a 13-year-old in my class, and we're doing a school project for Career Day. And the students have all been tasked with interviewing someone who's in a career they want to do. The student identified to me in class that he's been following your blog. And he has several cousins that were born premature, and he would really like to find out more about you because he's thinking of becoming a neonatologist. And I thought, my God. Here I was, thought I was talking to nurses, doctors, RTs, parents. There's a 13-year-old who's reading this stuff. So as a word of warning, I'll repeat that. There's a 13-year-old reading this stuff. So I need to keep it clean. But this was actually a big inspiration to continue going because I could actually make a difference in somebody's life. And that to me was the inspiration to continue. So we talked about 20 years ago what people thought about what academic medicine was. In 2015, Myers in the Medical Post published this article in which Myers suggested that the new triple threat, the new academic medical triple threat, was focusing on leadership, entrepreneurship, and innovation. How amazing is it we're talking about innovation in this segment? And that's what this is about. It's innovative ways, entrepreneurial ways, like the Medfluencers, to lead change, to have a podium, a place that you can talk about things. So it started to get me thinking, maybe there's something to all this social media stuff. Maybe it is legitimate academic medicine. And then I was vindicated. In 2019, I was approached at the university and I was told, you should consider applying for academic promotion. I said, oh, come on. Based on what? They said, no, some of the stuff you're doing on social media could be very innovative. And so I decided to. I was successful. I went from assistant to associate professor. And in the letter I received from the university, that is what they highlighted, which you could say it's a glass half full, half empty. They didn't highlight any of my actual research. What they said was, hey, this social media stuff, it's innovative. You're reaching people nationally, internationally. You're educating. I'm a teacher, and I'm reaching people. My life was complete. 2022, the same physician that had pulled me aside in an alcove spots me in another alcove, and she grabs my arm, and she says, come here for a second. She says, do you think you can use your social media channels to promote this conference we're doing? Because even the biggest naysayer had converted. And why had she converted? Because when you give a talk to your fellows or your residents, maybe you reach 5 or 10 people. When you speak at grand rounds, how many people do you reach? A couple hundred. Here we are, right? Although I know it's also online, so we're reaching far more than that. But then, when you go to social media, very recently, this is just captured this past couple weeks. I taught about the Babinski reflex on TikTok. And while I realize this is highfalutin medicine here, so we all know what the Babinski is, there's a whole lot of people out there that don't know what that is. But there's now 38.8 million people who saw that video, okay? And so if they're ever playing with their kid's foot and they do something funny with it, they now know not to be alarmed, okay? So I want to go back to the 5 pillars. The 5th pillar in my mind is knowledge translation, and I think that's something everyone needs to think about. It's great that we're doing research. It's great that we're doing academic medicine. How do you get it into the hands of people who need it? If you don't work in a tertiary care institution, North Dakota is right below me. I can tell you there's not a lot in North Dakota. It's pretty barren. There's very small areas. Are they getting access to the same academic journal clubs and whatnot that many of us are? They are going to get this information through social media. And I think that that's an important task that all of us can do. And I want to just close with this. I am more than just an internet personality. And if I haven't sold you on that today, then maybe I'm not the salesman I thought. But I will say that I believe it's fate that I'm standing before you on this very stage today. In 1994, I made a pledge. And a lot of people in this audience also made a pledge. And that pledge is what led me to be here today. The second line of that pledge was, I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose steps I walk, and gladly share knowledge, as is mine, with those who are to follow. This is the Hippocratic Oath. And almost on a daily basis, I am sharing knowledge with those who I follow, or who follow me. Thank you.